Boom! An explosion of fire erupts near the four of you, tearing through your wagon and sending each of you tumbling through the air. As you thud hard to the ground, shards and flaming splinters of the former coach rain down all around you. The ringing in your ears overwhelms your senses for a moment, and as you try to gather yourself and the scene around you, you can feel your heart pounding in your chest with adrenaline pumping and coursing through your body. And as you attempt to stand, a pair of screams cut through the ringing to alert you to the danger. Ox and ambush! Rising to your feet, you see a horde of vicious, black-skinned orcs descending down the hill bank with painted red faces and wicked, gnarled grins. From the rumors that you were told before your journey to Egan's Pass, one sticks out in your mind immediately. The Blood Whips will offer no quarter. Please, roll initiative. For me, the start of a brand new campaign is one of the most exciting parts of playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I think a lot of people probably feel the same way. There's something about that fresh sheet of paper to take notes on, the new abilities for that new character that I spent a few hours dreaming up that I just can't wait to try out, and the eagerness to see what my Dungeon Master has been working on that just gets me pumped up. And when I'm behind the screen, oh man, I cannot wait to see how my players will react to the setting and initial story seeds I've probably spent an unhealthy amount of time thinking about in the shower, when I'm trying to sleep at night, and to be honest, when my wife tries to get me to help her pick out what necklace she should wear to a family dinner when she's trying to one-up her two sisters. Yeah, they're in their 30s, still hyper-competitive. Love you, babe. And over the years, I've been on both sides of the screen for who knows how many campaigns and one-shots. I've started campaigns in taverns as both a DM and a player, ran a dozen groups through the D&D 5e starter box with its famous "You've been hired by Gundren Rockseeker for 10 gold pieces" start, and I've played through plenty of Elder Scrolls You're a Prisoner Who Needs to Escape games. But in my opinion, there is one way to start a new campaign that just completely outshines all of the others. And I, of course, am speaking about in medias res. In medias res, in short, means in the middle of. It drops the audience, or in our case as Dungeon Masters, the players, right into the beefy bit of the story. But the Dungeons and Dragons way to use this opening does work a bit different than a typical book or movie. So I think first I should provide a few examples of what in medias res is that people might be a little bit more familiar with, so we can talk about how some of these differ from D&D when we're trying to successfully execute it at the table. The important thing to keep in mind is that what I'm about to show you are the absolute very first scenes of their movies, give or take, with some editing on my part to kind of cut them down a bit for brevity.
I cannot believe you are early.
an explosive charge in your head. Does that sound familiar? The rabbit's foot, where is it?
I gave it to you.
Ethan. Where's the rabbit's foot?
What are you saying? That wasn't it? What I gave you?
I'm gonna count to 10. You're gonna tell me where the rabbit's foot is, or she dies.
Jules, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. Do you understand?
1.
You listen to me. I got exactly what you asked for. Did you want something else? If there was a misunderstanding, I will fix it. I can get it. Whatever you want.
2.
Are you listening to me? The only way you're gonna get what you want is for you to...
You think I'm playing? You think I'm playing? You don't think I'll do it? Where is it? Where the hell is it?
Look at me.
Where the hell is it?
Each of these movies presents with a slightly different take on in medias res. Kill Bill jumps us right into the present action with a hinted at history we are not yet privy to. Star Wars sets the stage with its famous scrolling prologue, and Mission Impossible 3 literally jumps us into the middle of the movie, only to backtrack in time to the actual start of the story with the knowledge of what is to come later. While all powerful uses of in medias res, Kill Bill and MI3 employ the technique in ways that work better for movies than they do for a D&D game. However, Star Wars approaches in medias res in a way that would be ideal for a new D&D campaign, as players need to have some sort of information to play off of as they begin to improv and interact with the world around them. And I'll tell you how I like to approach that information here in just a few moments, but first, let's talk about some of the game reasons why I like in medias res beyond, hey, it's just a really cool way to start a new game. Starting a campaign off as in medias res completely cuts out all of the terrible awkwardness of character introductions. Raise your hand if you've ever said to your players or had a DM start a game along the line of, Gart, as the barmaid brings you your mead, you notice a grizzled dwarf in the corner sitting alone. Frank, what does Flint look like? Oh, you see my dwarf dressed in head-to-toe studded dark brown armor with a red-plumed helmet with 3 spikes and an axe and that blah, 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 fucking blah. No one cares. I'm sorry. If you by chance think that people care about what your character is dressed like in game, I hate to break it to you, they don't. They're really just waiting for their turn to describe their character's appearance, for which no one else cares until everyone has described their characters and the DM can finally, get on with the game. By the way, don't feel bad if you've ever ran a game like that. I've been playing for 2 decades now, and I assure you, every DM has fallen into that trap before. Seriously, everyone. Matt Mercer, Chris Perkins, everyone. So don't feel bad. I mean, you should stop it. But that doesn't mean that you're an awful DM if you've started a new game like that before. It happens. But by starting the game in the middle of the action, it cuts all of that out. The players around the table are given a shortcut right to the fun of the game. Jumping right into the action is the fun part, the adrenaline pumping part. It's literally what they are there for, to get into the story and the game. Nobody spends hours coming up with a new character for a campaign and thinks, oh boy, I can't wait for Frank to describe just how black his cloak is while we all stare at him awkwardly. I really hope he comes up with a cool plume or something. Maybe he'll even tell us it's colorful, like a bold red or something. Oh boy, I just can't wait for tonight so I can have Frank describe his character's clothes to us. On the other hand, it also helps the DM skip the awkwardness of introducing the campaign. Those first few minutes of the start of a campaign where you, as the Dungeon Master, are trying to get everyone at the table involved, letting everyone get to speak a little bit as you present them with their first choice, where hopefully everyone will have a say in it. Additionally, I find with all parties thrown into an in medias res that they almost immediately stop table talk and focus on the game at hand. Those instances of people still filling out their sheets and looking over their spells again with a buddy while another party member describes, just how black his cloak is, all of that just dies away instantly. And they participate in the game because, well, it's their turn. Another point is that it takes all of the pressure off of you as a Dungeon Master to hook your players into your initial story seed while being fearful of railroading them. You don't have to railroad them from the tavern or meeting with the patron into their first encounter revolving around your grand plot hook, because you've already railroaded them, which is a dirty little dungeon master trick as part of an in medias res opening. No more having to worry about why someone has sent each of them a mysterious letter, or why they've all decided to take up a bounty at the exact same time, or having someone burst through the tavern doors screaming for help, all while your players whine about, well, why would my character get involved and not just let the town guard handle the issue? Your players are just already involved. They have taken the contract, agreed to help the town find the missing children after they've disappeared into a nearby dark cave, and they've already traveled to the Necromancer's Tower as its defenses of gargoyles and undead rise to prevent their intrusion. I also feel like it immediately satisfies both types of players at the table. Those who are excited to play with the characters in combat and explore what they can do, and those that come to the table looking for a great story and a chance to help shape that story with an emphasis on roleplay. Now, I'll mention that I'm not advocating that all games forever that use in medias res have to start with an initiative roll, but even if the first initiative roll comes 15, 20 minutes into the session, usually these games will be pointing sharply upwards to a conflict point. Even if you want to start your players off as in the middle of exploring a dead ship with 600 eggs stuck to the bottom of its hull, that's fine, because it's clearly pointing to a climactic scene of potential conflict. And finally, when paired with a campaign primer, it can create a much more natural group bond. There is no last minute, a demon is attacking the town, let's all group up and afterwards we'll all be best friends traveling the countryside as a band of adventurers. Awkward formation of the party that eats up 40 minutes at the start of the session. Even if your PCs are not lifelong friends and relatives, the group can be assumed. Another little DM tip for the formation of the party. Those, why should I suddenly trust you with my life as a traveling companion, dialogue moments can be rendered moot, and a relationship between the PCs can be implied. Even a simple implication that the 4 or 5 person party has been traveling together for the past week on their way to escort this wagon to another city can put at ease those RP moments of 4 to 5 individuals with individual goals that are often put on hold to pursue a brand new group goal with a bunch of strangers. It can be enough to give the group a bit of cohesion. Now let's talk about a few Dungeon Master tips that will help you create a strong in medias res opening. First, I really like to start with the primer. If you guys have never used a campaign primer before, I think they can be great for setting the right expectations in a lot of areas. Now, I'm not gonna go into full depth on every little detail of all the little things that I like to include on a primer, but as an example, I will usually put some sort of brief description for the players to set the tone. Usually no more than a single paragraph. For instance, as my patron campaign asked me to run Out of the Abyss, the game literally starts with all the PCs as prisoners. So I literally copied and pasted the read aloud text for the DM at the start of the game, and then added that I wanted my players to each come up with how they were all captured and send it to me before the first session. One key thing to keep in mind here is that I always give out my campaign primer before anyone starts building their character. You might feel differently about this, but I have never found doing it in that order to cause an issue, whereas I have ran into issues with people wanting to rewrite things about their character if I give them the primer after they've already started creating them and they try to kind of force them in. So just a bit of advice from personal experience there. This sets the stage for the game, just like the scrolling text at the beginning of Star Wars. And it allows them to show up to the table with this information ahead of time. So as I jump into my in medias res opening, they have context and already have emotional attachment beginning to form, even if it's just a small spark by then. Another thing I would recommend is to avoid time jumps. These work great in movies, jumping into the middle of the story and then backtracking to how the protagonist arrived there. But don't do this in your game. All this is signaling to your players is that you intend to railroad them, and that their choices aren't going to matter. No matter what trouble they get into or tough fights they face, they know they're going to live to make it back to this scene. And as I've mentioned before here on the channel, if your players feel like they have zero player agency, your game is doomed. So avoid this little pitfall. It may sound like a really cool idea, but save it for your book, not the gaming table. Also, while you don't have to physically write out a primer weeks ahead of the first game, I would make sure to give them some kind of context, even if you do it right at the start of the session. Telling your players they've been on the road for a few weeks, heading to X place as they've been hired by Y person, may not be as exciting as the game starting out with a loud boom and wave of fire. But if you've skipped the primer, your players need something to go off of. Otherwise, they're just showing up to the table with whatever expectations they came up with in their own heads. And now they will have to rectify the character they dreamt up with the actions that led them in the group with a bunch of strangers to take on a necromancer in his tower. And don't be stingy with information at the start of the game once your conflict has died down. It's totally okay to feed the players info about the events that led up to this point to make sure that they've got enough to go on to decide on what to do next. And finally, if you're going to use in medias res to start a new campaign or even a one-shot, my advice is to start with the single most exciting part. Chris Perkins said something once and it really stuck with me, and I'm completely butchering and paraphrasing here, but he said something along the line of, when you're the dungeon master, you should tell the stories you're the most excited about, because you never know if you'll get the chance to tell them later. And he's right. Groups break up, schedules get in the way, life happens. But I think this is a lesson that's also applicable when using in medias res. If you want your campaign to start off with the trope of having already been captured, guys, that's fine. But let me ask you this. Unless the part of the game you're the most excited about is the PCs being naked with no weapons, armor, or components to cast spells, is there any reason why the game has to start with the players figuring out how to get their hands on the cell keys to free themselves? Is there any reason why you couldn't just start the game with a dead guard being dragged into the cell right as the alarm goes up and the PCs, along with a few new NPC thug friends, already being in the middle of their escape, or having the cell wall next to them explode as a local gang comes to the rescue of their associate, while one of the NPCs looks up to tell the players, "If you stay, the hangman won't care how much you say you had nothing to do with this," pointing to the destroyed wall. So if all you're trying to do is set the stage, skip the awkwardness of your players introducing their characters while using a little dirty DM trick of having already railroaded them to the hook of the main campaign. There's nothing to keep you from jumping right into the juicy bits of the story. And I suggest you start with whatever you think is the most exciting part of that. All right, so now I want to ask you guys, what is the single coolest start to a game that you have ever been a part of? Player, DM, doesn't matter. Just tell us down below. What is the coolest way you've ever had a Dungeons and Dragons game start? Whether it's 5th edition or not, that's fine. Tell us what those stories are. I cannot wait to read through those to see what you guys have come up with and what your DMs have come up with. And hopefully we'll have a nice little comment section filled up with really great suggestions for my next campaign. I mean, you know, mostly it's you know, for me. It's for me. I, of course, want to give a huge shout out to all of the amazing, sexy ass patrons over at WelcomeAdventures.com. I'm going to lose patrons from this. If you guys like what I do here, you want to support the channel and more content like this, a great way to do that is over at WelcomeAdventures.com, where you guys can grab some extra rewards. We've just got the new maps going, so those will be coming out to you patrons. If you guys didn't see February's map, don't worry. I think we have 3 of them on the way here in the next week or so. And then if you guys want to jump into a meeting with me, you guys can do that. I may have future D&D games where you guys can just game with me once a week going up. So you guys can check over there for all of that at WelcomeAdventures.com. If this is your first time here and you love role-playing games as much as I do, I'd love to have you subscribe. Every week I put out new videos on GM tips, player tips, tutorials, and more. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, just hit that subscribe button down below and come join us. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Cody, and may your games be filled with awesome memories. and even better friends. I'll catch you guys next time.
Yeah.